Thank you very much for being here tonight, especially since this is probably the last session for a while. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for having me here, and enjoy this evening. I will see you all later. Bye-bye.
Say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? Once again, we take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for allowing our civilization to communicate to your civilization through this particular window and in this manner at this time. Once again, each and every time, you help us co-create this particular kind of transmission. We are gifted with an expansion of awareness of the infinite by seeing through each and every one of you that many more ways that the infinite has of expressing itself within creation, and we thank you for this gift. This particular transmission will begin a little bit differently than usual. In that now there are beginning to be certain understandings on your planet about certain subjects having to do with your history, and more insight into the differences that many of you are now discovering about your history, as opposed to what many of you for a long time have been taught to believe are certain aspects of your history. It will now be, to some degree, this day of your time, discussed that some of these aspects, as now shall be revealed, will put into focus, will put into perspective certain mysteries, certain agendas, certain bits of information that heretofore perhaps have not seemed to fit. But for the purpose of the delivering of this particular piece of information, we will, in an untypical fashion, allow a connection to be made for the delivering of this information to another level of consciousness, and there will, for the purposes of the delivering of this information, be a blending until such time as this initial monologue is concluded. This may translate into your language in an unusual way, in that it is coming from an unusual source. But we will endeavor to do our best to allow the translation to make sense to you as we modulate and regulate this information into your language. For it is not coming in the form of language, but only in the form of energy, only in the form of thoughts, only in the form of ideas and concepts, and must require a translation through the physical device, the biological device called the channel sitting before you. So if you will, indulge for a moment the difference as you may perceive it, and we will, with that assurance, begin. One moment. This then will be labeled as a story, the engine of Ascension. And it came to pass that after many generations of humanity had existed upon the earth and had achieved expansion within their understanding and greatness of civilization, that there came into the consciousness of the collective humanity discord and dissension, and an amplification of polarization, and a splitting into that which is called the darkness and the light. And as this experience of dichotomy expanded, thus then came to the center of the civilization upon the earth at that time great destruction. And this civilization in your old language, as you have known it, was Atlanti, or in your modern tongue, Atlantis. And it was seen by those who were involved in the initial conception of mankind, who go by the name in your language of the founders, that the dissension and discord and destruction that had been created upon the earth would last for a very long time. And it was seen by the founders that this destruction could possibly never be recovered from. It was thus decided, and it was thus understood, that assistance was required. And it was decided, and it was understood, that the assistance must, in your language, come in the form of vibration and energy, to promote the concept of healing, rebalancing, and ascension. Because the destruction was great, and the destruction was widespread. And thus it was seen that only something monumental would repair the rip, would rebalance the damage that had been done, would bring the polarity back into balance upon the earth. And so a great plan was created. And it was understood in this plan that it must involve the entirety of the earth. And it was understood in this plan that it must connect the karma incarnationally, not only of the lives upon the earth that had been lived, but also of the lives incarnationally of the past that had connected to other planets in the system. For it was known and it was understood that that which became ultimately the human community upon the earth had also, in ancient times, incarnated upon the planet you know as Mars when it was inhabitable. And thus it was seen And it was understood that the karmic cycles that were begun on Mars and the karmic cycles that were continued upon the earth were continuations and must be taken into account. And it was decided that this would be so. And it was understood at that time, in the creation of the darkness from the light, that there was no light in the darkness. And it was understood that light must come into the darkness in order for balance to be achieved. And it was seen that there was great light that created the day, that which you call the solar entity, the sun. And it was understood that there must be a counterpart to balance this energy out, so that the vibration of intuition and the vibration of insight and inspiration would be called forth, brought forth, amplified. And so a great task was begun. It was understood that the introduction of light into the night must be a counterpart to the earth on all levels, including physiologically. And thus, such a counterpart was sought out. And a counterpart body was discovered. And this body, this planetary body, was devoid of life. And a long search was made to discover this body, and it took a great amount of time. But once this body was discovered and was deemed to be fitting to the task, it was then engineered to its purpose and molded to its purpose and changed to its purpose. And this body was brought from a great distance and was fixed about the earth. And this body you know as the moon, for it did not originate in your neighborhood. And this body was introduced to the system after the natural body was engineered, after the natural body was altered, and was put into orbit about the earth. And it was understood that the ratio and the perspective and the vibration and the relationship must be based on the engines of growth and the engines of expansion and the natural mathematics of the infinite. And thus it was understood that the body must be placed in direct proportion to the earth that represents the ratio of growth, that which you in your modern times have come to know as the phi ratio of 1 to 1.618. That is the ratio of growth of all living things, of all nature upon the planet that you know as your home, the earth. And so it was fixed in its orbit at such a distance to be representative of this ratio. And it was seen that it must also exemplify and reflect exactly the vibration of the light, that which you call the solar entity of the sun. And so it was fixed in orbit to be representative of exactly the same dimension visually as the sun, thus accounting for the exactness of the eclipse of your moon over the sun, in that it fits precisely and appears to you to be of the same size visually in your sky, and is thus then the sun of the night, reflecting the solar light, so that there is now a light in the darkness. And it was understood that according to these sacred geometries, it represents itself within the structures also that relate to the idea of the karma that is represented by the incarnational past of Mars, upon which your civilization also did experience itself in times past. So there is a mathematical relationship in geometric form between your Earth and your Moon and your Mars, being that also representative of Mars being 1/2 the size of your Earth, being it also representative of the Moon being 1/2 the size of your Mars, being also the relationship in phi ratio representation between the Earth and the Moon, exactly represented by the shape on your planet you call the Great Pyramid of Gizeh. This then was created on the planet of the Earth. This then was created on the planet of Mars. This then was created on the Moon. and each of the three bodies exhibit these structures you call pyramidal, and each do contain the ideas of sacred geometries, and each do relate to each other vibrationally, and each is connected to the other vibrationally and synchronistically, so that they will compound and amplify and accelerate each other, bringing the karma into balance and allowing there to be the moon as the engine of ascension for the purpose of regulating the cycles upon the planet of the earth that was thrown into chaos by its polarity. And thus it was designed that the regularity of the moon and the cycles of the moon be such as to connect to the cycles of consciousness upon the earth, so that all would fall into line, and so that all would be amplified cyclically, so that all would spiral upward according to plan, so that all would come into synchronization and harmony along the golden proportions and the sacred geometries. So that is then why you will find on the full moon the destabilization of consciousness that you refer to as lunacy. And in this way it will be the recalibration of your consciousness and the ability for the reconstruction of the personality component, so as to allow the crossing of a new threshold and allow the ascension and stepping up of your vibration and the allowance of the reconstruction of the personality component, so that you can become new people with each passing phase. And all of this was put into place, and it was seen as good, and it was good, and it was understood that in time it would be reflective of the expansion of consciousness and the rebalancing of the consciousness and the bringing into balance of the karmic idea of the collective consciousness of the people that now call themselves human upon the earth. But in remembrance now that they are spirit, forever have been and forever shall be, experiencing themselves in the human modality. And it was seen that all was right, and it was seen that all would come to light, now that there is light in the darkness, and now that there is inspiration, and now that there is cyclic balancing, and now that there is intuition, and now that there is a light in the darkness, and now is the time of the culmination of all these cycles, and this is the age of transformation on your planet that aligns and connects geometrically to the moon, to your Martian past, and to your future potential. And this was done in your past approximately 11,000 of your years ago. And before that time, there was no moon. And before that time, there are records of there being no light in the darkness from the people that lived therein. And until that time, there was then the growth that led to the chaos. And from that time, out of darkness and chaos comes the light in the darkness that brings you back into reflection and marriage of your male and female and all your polarities within yourselves, so that you can become once again the reflective light and not go into chaos this time around. And it was so that it was. And this is the story of the engine of ascension that you call the moon. We thank you for allowing us to bring this story through this day of your time. It is timely that you now understand these things, for more and more and more data is now pouring in to what you would call your scientific circles, your astronomical circles, and there is now heightened realization that there are certain artificialities about the moon. Not that it is in and of itself an artificial body, but that it is a natural one converted artificially for certain purposes that are yet unknown to the majority of your planet. But many of your scientists are beginning to realize that it is not there by nature, but by purpose, intended for the rebalancing of the cycles on your planet. Though this is an understanding they have yet to know. But when the chambers shall be opened, in the pyramids and in the Sphinx upon your planet in the years to come in your near future, this will be understood. And as you also discover, when you move out to the planets in space, the same structures on your moon and the same structures on your Mars, you will understand your history and know your present and see your future. Again, we thank you for this opportunity of sharing and the great gift you give to our civilization in allowing us to communicate with you. In return for this gift at this time, I ask you, in what way may I and my world be of service to you? You may begin with sharing in any manner you so desire.
Good day, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I would like to ask questions about my CD. I showed it to the channel.
Yes.
Yes, and I...
Your music.
Yes. I would like to ask your impression of it.
Impression?
Yes.
Now understand in that sense that this will not in any direction, nor can it be an endorsement of such, but we will understand that you are experimenting with golden tonalities, golden ratio proportions, but there may be perhaps about, shall we say, a 77% understanding of this, and if you will take what you understand now and expand upon it, you will find that you will be capable of locking this in appropriately and more precisely to the golden proportion dynamics and tonalities that you seek. But it is moving in the correct direction and is, in your terms, about 77% of what you inspirationally know that it can be. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Does this help you?
Yes, it does.
Anything else?
Yes, I would like to ask a question about what's been going on in, I would say, the recent past, which seems to, for some reason, be associated with the retrograde of Mars. Seems to have caused a lot of negative things to come up.
Again, these things, such as your planetary motions, cause nothing.
Yes.
They are reflective of changes already going on within you, however, synchronistically as symbols of timing that archetypally represent the kind of changes you may now be going through. And as we have to some degree already pointed out, with the aid and assistance of one of the founders, the idea now is that the ancient past of Mars and the incarnations that your people had upon it when it was inhabitable are now coming back to the forefront of your consciousness, must be reintegrated, whether, shall we say, historically, but not so much that you have to know the history, but it must be reintegrated energetically. And this simply means letting go, in a sense, of certain old ideas and bringing yourself squarely into the present and being fully who you are. So sometimes people on your planet will find, however, that symbolically Mars will, shall we say, make itself seem more apparent than other times and may be representative of great challenge and may seem to create the idea or reflect the idea of some degree of struggle. But this, again, is only the challenge of integrating more of yourself and getting in touch with the concepts you call the past and bringing them into the present consciously rather than leaving them unconscious. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
So it is that which is representative of what you call karma, but only in the recognition that karma is completely self-imposed. It is not in any way, shape, or form the concept of retribution, but only the concept of balancing that which you feel is out of alignment with your own truth. And thus then the idea of the Martian reflection symbolizes and reflects this to all of you. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Does that help you then?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
My husband passed away March 6th of this year.
All right.
I feel as though he's been with me.
As always, this, again, is a natural and normal thing that individuals who, in your terms, will cross over into spirit will quite often make contact with those still in physical reality, yes. But again, do remember that they also have lives to keep living and that they are very busy. Also, time for them is not what it is for you, and many times the idea of what may seem to be a few moments to them may be weeks and months to you in your terms of time. Make sense?
Yes.
And so?
I would like to contact him. I would like...
But you already have, as you have already acknowledged. Do you mean more consciously?
Yes.
All right. What is the strongest thing that reminds you of him? What is the
personality?
Strongest thing specifically, be it a situation or an object or a feeling that you can, in your terms, muster up to recreate and recapture the strongest vibration emotionally of him? Can you be more specific other than just saying personality?
His sense of humor.
Sense of humor, all right. Can you be more specific about that? The more you can narrow it down to a very specific vibration that feels like the strongest energetic representation, the easier it will be for you to open up a conduit of contact that you are consciously aware of. Because it isn't that the contact isn't occurring, it's just that what you're actually asking for is more conscious awareness of it. You follow?
Yes.
So, you have to be in the appropriate vibrational state to be aware of the information that is already happening along the lines of communication between you. And the appropriate state will be representative of the strongest vibration emotionally of love and joy that you can associate to some specific reference with regard to him. When you're in that state, if you then simply stay in that state, your life synchronicity will begin to include more obvious representations of messages directly from him. Do remember that very often information and communication from what you would call the spirit world, because of the degree of density of physical reality, may actually be easier by allowing the spirit to simply turn your attention to something that already exists in front of your face in the physical reality that is symbolically representative of them, rather than attempting to create a message from scratch, as you say, that you think you're supposed to hear in some kind of words or pictures inside your head. Not that that cannot happen, but sometimes it's easier for them to simply turn your attention to something that's right in front of your face in a way that you will recognize it as a message from them, because it unerringly makes you think of them and nothing else, seemingly sometimes even out of context. Do you understand this?
Yes, I believe so. Would this be like him contacting my grandson and coming through my grandson?
It can be things like that, yes.
Okay.
But the more you stay in the vibration, the more it can happen more directly and personally for you in the synchronicity that unfolds right in front of your face in your life, without necessarily needing to involve anyone else, although again, that is something that also can be done if the grandson represents a path of least resistance.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Now, have you not already had some contact in what you would call your dream time?
Yes, I believe so, but it's vague.
Vague. All right. What do you recall? Now, again, we understand that sometimes the idea of dream can simply be memory and fabrication from your own mind based on your connection or your desire or longing to be in contact with them. But very often what you may remember as a dream about them may actually often be a contact from them. So what do you remember?
Basically, just a feeling of love.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Any images, any places, any locations at all? Any objects that were handed to you? Anything that you picked up in the dream or saw or were shown specifically?
No.
Nothing at all?
Not that I can recollect.
All right. When was the last time you remember dreaming of him?
Before he passed.
Not since?
No.
Then what makes you feel that you have had contact since?
I feel physically hugs.
All right. One moment. That is a good place to begin. How does it feel when you feel that?
Wonderful.
All right. Then that's the vibration we're talking about with regard to the specificity we were asking you to find.
Okay.
Remember the feeling when you feel hugged. That's the vibration that will allow contact to be easier and more synchronistic in your life. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Because it will put you in the proper wavelength, the proper frequency, more easily to receive. Does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasant dreams to you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bashar.
And are you good day?
I was looking for some personal clarity.
Personal clarity.
Personal clarity in regards to some decisions that I'm trying to make.
Decisions you are trying to make.
Yes.
Are you going to make them, or are you only going to try to make them?
I don't know.
Oh, all right. That's up to you.
Yes.
I will never remove any process you deem is necessary.
Yes. Well, I was wondering, is it too vague to? I don't know exactly, what source of information you have, but is it possible to ask you for any particular guidance in regards to those decisions?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it deals with my family and where we're going at present.
Where you're going?
Yes.
Can you interpret that phrase?
Well...
Are you talking about physical relocation?
No.
Are you talking about emotionally?
Emotionally and relationship.
All right, so what do you mean, where we are going? Are you going somewhere together? Are you apparently growing apart? What are you saying?
Growing apart.
All right, in what way?
In every way.
In every way?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because I guess we don't see eye to eye.
Eye to eye. All right. You feel, then, that this is so fundamental that you cannot co-create any longer the same kind of relationship you have had. Is that what you are saying?
Yes.
All right. What is it about this that is so fundamental? Can you name some of the fundamentals that this touches upon for you? For you. What seems to be the dichotomy that you perceive?
Well, that would be, boy, that would be everything.
Well, just name one. What do you feel is one of the more important ones?
How to raise the children would be one.
How to raise the children. Yeah. Meaning what?
Boy, this could go on, couldn't it? Well,
can you be more specific? How to raise the children. Are your views diametrically opposed?
Yes.
Can you be specific about what you mean by that?
Well, it's...
Give me an example.
Well, I mean, there's several I could
give me an example.
Taking responsibility for what they do.
You mean teaching them to take responsibility for what they do? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
You are diametrically opposed that this should be done or how to do it?
That it even should be done, yes.
Who decides that they should not take responsibility for what they do?
It would be my wife.
And what do you think she means by that? Do you think she actually means that? Or do you think that you have a semantical misunderstanding?
It could be a little bit of both.
All right. Do you actually believe, is she being clear that she is actually saying your children should not be responsible for their choices and their actions?
Well, of course not.
Then what did you mean by that phrase?
Well, the end result happens that way.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what she prefers, does it?
Well, not necessarily, but the end result.
All right, we understand that the end result may be the product of what individuals may be doing that may be contrary to what they prefer, but let's begin with what individuals actually think they want to have happen. So are you now saying that as far as the idea conceptually that children ought to know they are responsible for the consequences of their actions, do you see eye to eye on that in principle?
Yes.
All right,
yes.
Well, that's a nice start. Is it not?
Yes, it is.
All right. So you are simply saying that the methodology, the difference in methodology, seems, as far as you can tell, to result in apparently the opposite effect of what it is that is desired or stated as a desire regarding the children's upbringing.
Yes.
All right. Can you now be more specific about the methodology that you think contradicts the original intention? What do you see as the contradiction in behavior that contradicts the intention?
Well, let me not get too far down this strike because we can get extremely specific.
And well, I would like to, yes.
I know, but we'd be here forever.
No, we will not.
Yes, I mean, we will.
No, we will not.
Well,
I guarantee it, because I will leave.
So would I. Well, let's put it this way. In general speaking,
yes.
I mean, all things considered, in a more general view of things,
yes.
Do you see it as a workable solution, all things considered, not just the topic we were discussing, to where there is a win-win situation for all parties concerned?
every situation can be created to be what you call a win-win situation. Of course, that will always depend on what the individuals involved are willing to do.
Right.
That's why I'm asking you what I'm asking you, to see if there is, on any level, the possibility of willingness.
So,
Yes?
are you able to communicate directly in some way or gather information directly from those members at this present time to even see how they see it so that you could come to a...
Apparently, there is great difficulty in doing this with you.
Yeah, well, no, not with me.
Oh, yes, with you. I have asked you a direct question, which you seem to be taking great pains in avoiding answering. Therefore, I am having difficulty extracting the necessary information to determine this from you.
Okay, well, if you want to go back to that other subject...
Thank you. So,
yes.
what do you perceive as a dichotomy between the method that is being used as opposed to the original intention?
Okay. Well, for instance, if there's a general agreement upon doing certain things, like around the house or
Yes.
in school or what have you,
Yes.
and those certain things are not, they're just not enforced. They're just basically they're allowed to have an awful lot of freedom to where no matter what happens...
Well, freedom is one thing.
Yes. And
the idea of what you would call sloppy parameters is another.
Well, yes, but I mean freedom to exercise whatever choices they want
Yes.
without necessarily having to be accountable to their parents or to anything or anyone. I mean,
again, can you give a specific example?
Okay, well, to leave and to go out and
Yes.
stay out all hours of the night.
Yes.
To do whatever they want to do, regardless whether they get in trouble with the law, regardless of they're flunking all their classes,
All
regardless
right.
of whether they...
And you are saying that one party in this relationship, one parental party, approves of this?
They approve of it by not actively...
They? Do you mean she?
She approves of it by not actively doing anything to prevent it.
So you're saying that her behavior condones it?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Do you find, thus, then, that the reason that this may be so, if this is in fact so, is that this is already something that exists within her and thus then is being reflected back to her by the children?
Yes.
Well, then the idea is that perhaps she needs to learn the consequences of her choices.
Yes, I understand that.
Well then,
I already know this.
obviously not enough to act upon it.
Well, act upon it in what way? I mean,
That is the question.
yes.
Act upon it in the way that to you represents the idea of your highest joy and recognition of alignment and integrity. In other words, if you feel that you can reflect in the situation to her simultaneously the same kinds of consequences in various situations according to her choices, then you can do this for all the other members of your family. But if you also find that you take it to a certain point and this simply is not responded to, then in that sense, yes, you may find that you may need to state that certain other consequences will occur, and you have to be willing to take action in that direction.
Yes, I already understand that.
Well, then this is clear.
Yes.
And so?
Well, Bashar.
Are you creating an environment in which the children are allowed to experience consequences of their choices?
To some extent, yes.
To some extent.
Yes.
All right. Listen. The idea here is to create in dialogue form, perhaps, at first, or in situational form, if you can manage it within your imagination, a series of events that involve and engage the others to volunteer their idea of what they believe the consequence of a particular action actually is. Not what you necessarily think it ought to be, but actually is. In other words, not the idea of saying, well, what do you think is going to happen to you if you do this when I get a hold of you? Not that you necessarily do it that way, but I am just using this as a general example. The idea more of, suppose you did this, and this was the consequence of that. Or, suppose you did this knowing that this is the nature of the way things are in this society. What do you think would be the consequence of that?
Yes.
Elicit in that sense, or solicit their response to this.
Yes.
Allow them to engage their own mind
Yes.
into what they think might actually happen, and question them and quiz them
Right.
on every point as to why they actually believe that would or would not be the consequence, and see if you can help them narrow down themselves the ability to see more clearly the consequences of their actions by engaging them in participation to discover what that consequence is
Yes.
with you, rather than simply telling them what the
Right.
consequence will be. Then it will be experiential on their part internally.
I've tried that.
Are you sure?
Yes, I am. They do not participate very well with that. They, in their own minds, they, to one degree or another, could not care less. They don't want to even discuss the topic.
I see. All right. Then it may be required that you allow the laws of creation to simply work synchronistically and show them the consequences of their actions, no matter what those consequences may be.
Yes.
As
Yes.
much as I understand it may pain you to do so as a parent, it may be necessary for you to allow them to do so.
Yes, I've considered that too.
All right. Then, in a sense, you actually have considered the things you need to consider.
Yes, I have.
Then the only thing I can suggest to you is that you understand that if you really have done all that, then the most loving thing you can actually do is let them be who they choose to be, and always be there for them if all of a sudden they decide, gee, you know, maybe he had a point,
Yes.
and want to talk to you about it.
Yes.
And always let them know you are there, but in that sense, allow them to understand that it will be being there for them to help discuss these experiences, rather than simply being there as some kind of an administrator or some kind of a warden.
Yes.
Then that may be the only loving thing at this point you can do.
Yes.
And in that sense, then, simultaneously, you may still be able to move in directions that are more representative of your own joy, even if that means a substantial change in the structure of the relationship. You
Yes.
understand?
Yes.
Does this help you?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. Were you expecting a magic elixir?
No, I was not.
All right. What do you feel is missing from this?
From this conversation?
Yes. I'll ask it this way. When you ask the question, what did you want to hear?
Well, I wasn't really certain.
Well, you had some idea.
Yes. I don't know really whether I want to be that honest about it.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Well, I don't know.
Be honest, for only in the honesty may you open a door that might actually allow us to extract information
Yes.
that will help you.
Yes. Well.
And there is a difference between what you thought you might hear and what you wanted to hear.
Oh, yes, I know.
All right, so what did you want to hear?
Well, I mean, whatever the truth was or is
Yes.
in regard to...
But what did you want that to be?
Whatever the truth is. I don't have a favorite one way or the other.
Yes,
I don't
you
care.
do.
See,
Yes, you do. You're not quite being honest enough. I understand what you mean empirically,
Yes.
but in your personality, you are feeling that there are vibrations that are not according to your preference, and thus obviously you recognize that certain actions and certain circumstances and situations would be more in conjunction with your preference. You do have some idea of what you think that would be representative of.
Yes.
So that would be aligned with what you preferred to hear. What would that be? If you were to ask the question all over again, what should I do? What can I do?
I don't think I would.
All right. But if you did, what would be the answer that in being given to you, would have allowed you to feel like you rang like a bell with alignment. Yes, that's it. That feels right. Invent an answer that would make you feel like that. Just use your imagination. I will give you some leeway, some freedom, as you say. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be the correct one. Just start by imagining and inventing an answer that you think would feel correct in response to your original question. What did you want me to say? Do you want me to start the ball rolling just to give you an example of what I mean?
Yeah, that would be nice.
All right. Yes, Lever, take the kids and move to Montana. Or, yes, if you say this magic word, she will all of a sudden understand everything perfectly. Everyone will come running back and say, oh yes, now we get it. We are a happy family. Let's go to Disneyland.
Well,
it can be anything like this at all. It doesn't matter if you deem it to be silly. But pick something that feels vibrationally like, yes, that's it.
Well,
in essence.
Okay, that would be
Yes.
that we would get along well, and we would
Get along well.
Yes.
Get along well.
Yes.
You mean that's what you want from a relationship? Just to get along well?
That would be a major improvement.
That's not what I asked you. You are hedging. What do you really want that will make you ring like a bell in a relationship? Well, what's the hesitation? Because you will be in pain if you name something grand that you think you'll never get? Is that the hesitation? You are afraid to go too far because you think it's unreachable? Is that the hesitation?
Well, somewhat, yes.
Well, stop it. You're holding yourself back. This is the essence of why you asked the question and why you are in the conundrum you are in. You yourself are placing certain vibrational limitations on your ability to know who you are and what you really prefer. Because you're afraid that if you know what it is, it will be uncreatable.
Well, yes, that's true.
It's not uncreatable, but it is as long as you're not in that space. So this is the answer for you, is to figure out what that space and vibration actually is and let yourself feel it, so that then if there is a chance for the components of this relationship to form to that vibration, they will, and if there isn't, then something that will come in and it will still feel correct to you because it will be representative of the vibration of who you are.
Yes.
Do you get it?
Yes.
Does that help you then?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bashar.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't have a question yet, but I'd like to say...
You can make a statement.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to say thank you very much, all of you, for the assistance that you've given and in the process of this awakening.
All right. We all say, you're welcome. And we all say, thank you, and all of you, for allowing us to experience another facet of the infinite.
Indeed, I'm speechless about this, but...
Oh, that's all right. We don't use speech on my planet at all. 227 million beings, not a sound. All telepathic, very quiet.
So this is a great peace, a great silence.
Thank you.
Yes. How is it that this occurred in this way, this form?
Do you mean on our world?
Now, here, on this world.
Do you mean the polarity, the dichotomy?
The awakening, the silence.
How did the awakening occur?
Yes, how does this awakening maintain itself so peacefully.
All it is a remembering of who you actually are. That's all. That's why. Because you already are the idea of this perfect peace and unconditional love, and obviously, if that's what you are, then nothing is actually required to maintain it. What you are experiencing is simply the awakening and the remembering of who you already are. That's your nature.
Yes.
That's how. Make sense?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Now,
Yes, it is.
vibration-wise,
Yeah, it's vibration-wise. Wise vibration.
yes. Can you call out a vibration of this form?
Of what you would call the natural perfect state of alignment and balance on your planet on an individual basis?
Of this body in front of you
At this moment.
at this moment?
About 184,000 cycles per second.
Indeed.
Give or take.
Yes,
There is always fluctuation.
indeed.
Does that help you?
Yes.
And?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I thought maybe I'd have a little fun asking a question or relating a scenario.
All
Well,
right.
concerning maybe the idea of your ability, your people's ability to scan us, or maybe a projected or in our terms, a future event. And specifically, as far as I'm concerned, or to bring everyone up to speed about what I do, I play pool or billiards,
Yes.
and sometimes in a tournament format, sometimes gambling with fellow competitors.
All right. We understand
okay.
the concept.
Now, for myself, for instance, coming up as an opportunity maybe to travel to Baton Rouge. Currently, there's a lot of, as we would say, action playing these different billiard games in Baton Rouge. I'm wondering what your ability
Will you
is.
use a red baton?
Oh, very good. Translation from the French for Baton Rouge?
Yes.
No, I don't believe I would use a red baton. However, there may be some red in the baton or cue stick that I do use.
Oh, all right.
So I'll have to check on that.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm just wondering, in terms of, and again, I think maybe most of us remember or recognize the idea that a prediction as such there is no such thing as a prediction,
Right.
but at any given moment,
There is an energy momentum
There is an
that
energy
seems
momentum.
probable to manifest in a certain direction.
certain direction, right?
Yes.
With that as a framework, in other words,
Yes.
and with my telling you of my intention, maybe within roughly a week, 10 days, 2-3 weeks, to visit Baton Rouge,
Yes.
and to maybe participate one way, shape, or form, in this
To
manner.
participate or to maybe?
Well, there's
If you're
not-
going to ask what you're going to ask, every variable is a piece of the equation and is
Okay.
important.
Okay.
So to participate in some form or maybe to participate.
I would assume if I go there, I will participate.
All right, thank
Okay. Just what do you see as far as, again, the momentum of any ideas that I've brought up here concerning that as a future trip for me?
8/10.
Oh, good. That's a number. I wonder what I would do with that.
80%.
I know that too. 4/5. 20% shy of one,
Well,
Now,
if you want to look at it from that
way.
perspective.
Well, in looking at it from every perspective I can imagine, I'm trying to figure out what is the message there, and you telling me 8/10.
What was the question?
Oh, who remembers at this point?
If you are more specific with
Okay.
the question,
Well-
perhaps you will see how the answer applies.
Okay. Well, maybe if I could rephrase the question or ask it this way, is there any particular aspect that you see as maybe most prominent concerning this idea, again, of me traveling to Baton Rouge?
Is it representative of your highest joy?
I do consider, my highest joy, recently especially, to be playing billiards and
Yes.
participating
But
this way.
the entire context of this particular situation, how does that fare as being, in the overall sense, as an entire event, representative of your highest joy?
I think it fits in there pretty good because it's exciting
all
to
right.
me, the prospect.
Fits in there pretty good. Would you say
Yeah.
that translates out to about, say 8/10?
8/10.
Would that be a fair assessment of the degree of excitement you have surrounding this particular event?
Okay. I really don't know, but reasonably it could be.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Is this what the 8/10 refers to?
Yes.
So I'm like 80%, so to speak, committed to going there and participating.
Yes.
Well, that would mean that there's a 20% holdback idea.
Which is not necessarily in and of itself a negative thing.
No.
You have to make the assessment as to whether this really is representative 100% of your highest joy or not. Right now it contains elements that would make it somewhere around 80% for you, regardless of whether you are creating it to be that way or whether it simply is that way. We cannot immediately tell, but we can tell that it is at about 80% of something that would be representative of your highest joy for one reason or another. Either you are coloring it, or it simply is or isn't representative in its own natural way.
Well, if things turn out, so to speak, it may happen that I don't go for whatever other reasons. I have
20%.
20%.
Right now.
I have certain things I'm dealing with here locally, and maybe that will cause me to choose not to go, at least not at this time. But if it happens within a week or 10 days or whatever that I do go, is there anything that you can say concerning any interaction for me down there?
Assuming, to continue to use your phrasing, that if you go, it will be representative of your excitement 100%.
Okay, yes.
Then, of course, there will be a vast unfoldment of synchronicity. If, however, you go still at the 80% mark, then, of course, you have to allow for that discrepancy.
Meaning that if it was in that scenario at the 80% mark and I
there
go
might
anyway...
be some confusion about what you would find yourself doing there from time to time. There would be perhaps in your terms a lack of clarity in certain circumstances as to what it is you need to do, because the scenarios will be representative of only the 80% mark and may not necessarily be as clear as they would be were they representative of the 100% mark.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh, yes, it does.
Clear as mud, yes?
Clear as mud. Well, no, it does. And of course, like I think a lot of questioners, we're looking for a few more specifics, or is there anything else or anything, that you might say?
All right, well, let me ask you, what is it about this at all that does excite you, aside from just the fact that it involves billiards?
Well, the idea of making money.
All right. What about Baton Rouge itself? What about the area itself? What about playing in that particular environment? Does that add anything at all to the excitement, or is that relatively nondescript?
That's relatively neutral. If the site were just about anywhere else, it would pretty much be the same. If it were happening in Montana or et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, well, some of that may be why we are perceiving that it is only at 80%. That may not be the entire 20% that is, in a sense, missing, but it may simply be that you don't care where it is, and that may be translating into some of that 20%. But do you follow?
I do, but in terms of a different context in terms of where it is, wherever it is as far as the city outside. Once on the inside, I know that I will know a lot of faces, and I know who's there, and
so you want us
that environment.
You want us to recalibrate for the idea that the location doesn't necessarily factor in?
Right, take the location out and, get to the nuts and bolts.
All right. Taking out the locational factor, you are somewhere more along the line of 87 to 93%.
Oh, climbing up there.
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously, there are still a few other things involved.
Yes. Who's going to be going? Meet some people, etc., and like that.
Yes. Are you going to have a good time if you go?
I don't see how I could miss having a good time.
Oh, all right. Then, are you going to go if you're having a good time?
Am I going to go if I'm having a good time?
Yes, I reversed the question. I know, in asking the first question, yes, you're going to have a good time if you go, but are you going to have a good time first? And then will having that good time seem to result in it being natural for you to go?
Oh. Well, I don't know.
No, that's up to you.
Thank God for that.
But it is a clue. It is a big clue. It is a big clue about what this is to you vibrationally in terms of being representative of your joy, where on your own scale it is for you, and When you determine what that is for yourself in its conceptual form, that may enlighten you as to the degree of likelihood that you will in fact actually wind up there. Because ideally, as you yourself have said, when you are representative of 100% of your joy, then you will simply wind up wherever it is that is representative of that. And, of course, as you have said, it will not matter what the location is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So in this sense, it is actually going to be determined first by whether you yourself, first of all, are resonating to the best of your understanding as close to 100% in your joy as you possibly can. Then, if this is a part of that, it will be there. If not, of course not.
But I have input from friends who
Yes.
are ready to send airline tickets and money and all that.
Yes. And it is up to you to decide whether or not
yeah.
these opportunities are representative of your highest joy.
Right. Okay, very good.
Does that help you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good time.
I will.
Good day, son.
And to you, good day.
In your opening statement, like always, we receive a lot of interesting information. In this case, I would like to ask you where the source of information came, because
I already told you. It came from the founders. I will not explain that further.
All right. Practically, I'm interested how this big object, moon, could be removed. What are the forces which move it?
There are electrogravitic implants within the body of the moon, deep within. They are discovered and registered on your instrumentation as what you have referred to as mascons. Mascons. Massive concentrations deep within the body of the moon, about what you would call 20 miles below the surface, that are large disc-like objects that are responsible for creating a relocation of the gravitational matrix and moving the moon to its present location and regulating its orbit.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would like to ask you, do you know something for already made connection with Martians, with the Earth, or how soon they will make a live connection with humans?
This will most likely not occur any time before your year of 2005. After that, we are uncertain.
Okay. Do you know if there are some UFOs, some Martian spacecrafts on Earth in this moment?
Did you say, in your terms, Martian?
Oh, well, Martian, yeah.
Not so much that, no. At this time, they do not really have their own spacecrafts. The transportation was provided, in your terms, by the race you call the Greys.
All right.
For those that then, when their world became non-inhabitable and were translated to your planet and genetically altered to survive there, the transportation was done by the Greys, not by Martian crafts.
Okay. How, just for curiosity, how big is one craft? Like a jumbo jet, or bigger or smaller?
There are many sizes of crafts.
All right.
There are crafts, in your terms, that you would call single-person craft, though the majority of what you would call scout craft are approximately built for 3. But there are what you would call city ships that are miles and miles and miles and miles. And in the sense that we have already discussed that your own moon, though originally natural, was engineered to be moved, in that sense, that could be called a craft as well.
All right.
But normally speaking, so to speak, you will find that there are crafts that are of many different sizes, depending upon the function.
Okay.
Transportation crafts for large civilizations will, yes, be many, 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 many miles in length. There are some that we are aware of that exceed what you would call 100 of your miles in diameter.
Okay. My other question is if what's the connection with Martians with the ancient Aztec civilization?
Yes.
Is there any connection?
Yes.
And what
There are genetic connections, yes.
between Martian and Aztecs?
And Egyptian, yes.
Okay. Except this information, which we know that exists under the Gaza pyramids, are there some physical object in forms of plates or some written on some signs which are here in America?
One moment. In, yes, certain places again in what you would call your Yucatan Peninsula. Under some of the pyramids there are another set of pieces of information, tools, plates, writings, and so forth, identical in their own way to the ideas that you will eventually uncover under the Gizeh pyramids and the Sphinx. Yes.
Well, from certain time well, let's use this word channeling, and I have an entity which comes to me always, and I have very concrete information that what he's telling me is true up till now. And with him I received certain information that here in Arizona there left some messages which are in connection with Martian civilization.
Yes, and in what you would call your New Mexico. But these are not the complete records. There are bits and pieces in a lot of different places. But we assume that your question meant where are complete records, and similar to the ones under the Sphinx. Complete records are in Yucatan, and also in certain places in your South America, as far as the American continents are concerned. But yes, there are many places where there is the storage of bits and pieces of some of the information, though it is not a complete record.
Okay, Bashar, and I would like to ask you if you can read my vibrations to see if there are some changes happening with me or something.
There are always changes happening with you, yes.
Yeah. But
you have an opportunity to make what you would call a dramatic shift. One moment. One moment. One moment. Is there some form of what you would call or recognize to be an important anniversary coming up for you in the near future?
Yeah.
What?
Well, it's kind of a life decision. It's more family.
Yes.
And?
When will this be coming up for you?
Now.
Now. You are making an important decision regarding your family now?
Now.
Can you share what this decision is? That you have to make?
Oh, the decision is just to send my ex-wife she's living with me, to some other place to live and to keep my son with me.
This seems to be a common theme today. As you go through this, then, we would suggest that not for the purpose of channeling so much, but just for the purpose of centering and maintaining the vibration that will help you the most, that you, if you do not already do so, continue what you would call a regular regimen of meditation. You follow?
Yes.
At least 30 minutes every day, when you find the best time for it. This will aid and assist you and guide you like a ship through what you would call choppy waters. That will be the best that we can recommend for you at this time, but the insights you require will be found in those moments of meditation, if you will do this every day. All right?
Well, thank you, Bashar, and I will be happy to see you again.
Thank you. Proceed.
While missionarying on this planet, I've been told that I was a Martian spacecraft commander, Bertonalong.
Many of you have Martian incarnations when the planet was inhabitable.
Furthermore, I was told my infinite name, the first name of it is Gabario.
Infinite name. Define that concept.
I believe that is the name that is written in stone with a light, that only whom it's been uttered to knoweth it. But I don't mind sharing with the people there. I just wanted to check and see if that's for accuracy. I'd have great trust and confidence in you if you could relate that last name to me.
It is more stemming from the idea that it is an offshoot of the vibration on the angelic level that is referred to as Gabriel. But you will have definitely a variant of this in making a connection to that level, and so in that sense it is accurate enough, as long as it has the Gabri prefix in it. So in that sense, something similar to the concept of Gabrion may be representative of a large-scale resonant identifying vibration for what you might call your oversoul. Yes. Did you understand that?
No, I didn't.
Not at all.
Partially, maybe. I don't believe I understood it. I felt
Yes.
that that you could give me my last name. I figured that was truly a sacred name. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had it. And you alluded to Gabriel and such as that, but that didn't seem to fit into or mesh with my consciousness somehow.
Mention the name you mentioned again.
Gabriel.
What you are saying as Gaberio is a variant of the concept of Gabrion, which is a variant of the concept of Gabriel, which leads you back to the concept of the angelic level vibration that is the closest connection to the infinite that you can have as a differentiated consciousness. That's what we are saying.
Thank you. Got it. The last name. Can you refer to that then?
What makes you think there is a last name?
Because it was given to me.
One moment.
Thank you.
You want this in reference to the same level? For again, there are differentiations that exist on different levels incarnationally.
It went along with Gabriel. So
one moment. The only translation that we can find in scanning from our dimension to yours would be the concept of the word lux, which connects to the concept of also the variation of eterna. This is the only translation at this time that we can find. We may not be, in that sense, aligned with the same vibrational matrix of understanding or reality construction that you have. But all that we can find that connects to the phrase you have given as Gaberio is the idea of Gaberio lux, which means light.
I will state the name and see if they can get a better connection then. Would that be okay or not?
Yes.
The name is Adin, A-D-D-I-N, or Adin.
Well, again, this is actually a repetition.
All right.
The idea is again similar to what you would call Adonai, which is simply again an overall name for the angelic realm. In other words, you are saying Gaberio, and you are adding more the idea of the soul level version of where that comes from, which to some degree is what we said when we represented it as Gabriel. Adonai is the first level split representation of the angelic realm, referring to itself as the infinite. Does that make sense to you?
I got it. Well, now. Will my mission be finished here before long?
Your mission is to be yourself.
Well, I'm doing that.
Well, then it will be done according to the appropriate timing when you have been of assistance in the way that you chose to be.
Thank you.
It is not a matter of time, but timing.
I put in for a soulmate, companion, lover, and all of this and that in 1989, and she hasn't showed up yet.
Put in?
Did you see an expectancy on that?
It is not a cosmic dating service.
I'll do it on my own. I'll hire my friend over here.
You have to be your own soulmate first to simply attract a reflection of what you already know yourself to be.
Okay.
And do not do it with expectancy, for that is the sure way to cut off the vibrational frequency. For you are, in that sense, implying that you are incomplete without it. And that only attracts a reflection of incompleteness. Make sense?
That's right.
Remember, the third law of creation is what you put out is what you get back. So watch your definitions when you talk about the idea of wanting a soulmate.
Okay.
Do you get it?
Yeah.
All right.
Don't like it, but I get it.
But you see, if you really understood it, you would love it.
Me.
Because to understand it is to love yourself unconditionally, and to love yourself unconditionally is to accept that the idea is that then a reflection in many different forms will be given to you. And you will drop the need for the expectancy that it has to come in a certain form, because you will then be willing to allow it to come into whatever form is truly representative, and paradoxically, that's when it can come in the form perhaps that actually would fit your idea of it, but may in fact even be grander than you imagined.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To Professor.
And to you, good day.
We all create our own reality.
Yes.
Individually.
Yes.
Collectively, we create the consensus reality.
Consensus.
All right? And we influence each other, don't we?
Not exactly, but in the sense that each of you provides a vibration that the others can then choose to be affected by or not. In that sense, yes. And on a fundamental level, in that you have all agreed to abide by certain reality constructs, yes. But not very much in terms of direct influence, but only choice to be influenced.
Yes, but suggestion, influencing. You know, if I give someone a suggestion, maybe they might create a situation just over the suggestion.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about, that
Yes.
type of influencing.
Yes.
Okay? And what I wanted to ask you was the gray counterpart again.
Yes.
I'm going to touch on that guy. How much did you influence me in creating that connection when you told me that years ago?
I see and understand your question.
Okay.
One moment. We must scan this from a particular perspective because this involves the idea of fluctuations in space and time, and we want to give you an answer that in a sense is appropriate for what you are asking, regardless of the concept that all things are eternal, which you already know.
Yes.
So, one moment.
All right.
One moment.
One other thing while you're making a trip?
One moment.
Okay.
All right. We understand at this time that perhaps the most appropriate way to answer this is the gray put in a third, you put in a third, and we put in a third.
Okay.
So there was a slight percentage that is actually more in your court. So slightly less than a third that I put in.
Okay. And this was done unconsciously on my part?
Until now. Yes.
Until I realized it?
Yes.
Okay. The gray that we spoke of, he was gray, Orion, Syrian, and Pleiadian, remember?
Yes.
What was the name of that civilization?
Do you mean of the grays?
Of, well, that particular gray. Or are all the grays, and you know...
Do you mean the faction name?
I'm talking about his particular civilization.
His faction?
Yes.
Within the grays? For there are many grays.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is, he's a combination of these four different sources.
From one perspective, yes.
From one perspective. He's a hybrid.
To some degree.
Okay. And I could call him the Syrian. I mean, it's just as much as I could call him the Gray, or the Pleiadian, or the Orion, right?
Well, from that context, yes. But you are looking for something that is more representative of the combination itself. Is that what you are saying?
Yes. Isn't there a distinct civilization or society?
There is a reference of themselves to themselves. That is not really the name of a civilization exactly in the same way that you call yourselves Earth.
Yes.
But might be more akin to self-reference to yourself as human. In their ancient understanding, they call themselves Kentucky.
Kentucky.
No. Kentucky.
Kentucky.
No. Kentucky.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that. I was going to say Kentucky Rain for a minute here. All right. Now, I've asked you about the Pleiadian connection.
Yes.
And we talked about that in a parallel reality and parallel Earth or whatever we had spoke of,
yes.
right? And
in a future context.
In a future context.
Yes.
Okay. Now, since I was a child, when I was very young, child.
As a human.
As a human.
Yes.
As a human. And this, what I consider this body, this lifetime.
Yes.
Okay, I realized I had connections to India.
Yes.
At a very young age, 2 years old, 3 years old. All right. I realized I had, and I felt that I had these connections to these beings that lived eternally, but
yes.
like in physical form on a planet.
Yes.
And I've always, when I first heard the reference to Pleiadians 14, 15 years ago, whenever it was, I felt like I identified with that source.
Yes.
Now, am I misconstruing that source? And is
no,
there
not
another
really.
civilization? Or?
Not really. Although it is mostly acting as a symbol for the fact that you recognize that they were offshoot cousins to the idea that is called on your planet the Anunnaki, which is actually closer to what you were resonating to.
Oh, that's what it was, the Anunnaki.
Yes. But through the Pleiadian, in that sense, connection, in that they were the ones most in contact with your people in that area of your planet at that time during that particular lifetime or lifetimes in what you call the Indian subcontinent.
Oh, okay. All right, because all right, that I understand.
All right.
The Mayans refer to Hanub-Ku as the center of the galaxy.
Yes.
You're familiar with this?
Yes.
And what goes on at this place?
Everything.
Everything.
Well, are you talking about the idea of what you would call the energetic center, literally, or are you talking about the idea of what might be called the cultural center? For there is both connotations in the same term, and you have to know the context in order to understand what is meant. So that term refers to the literal, physiological, astronomical, phenomenological center, but it also refers to the cultural center that you would call the federation or association.
All right, could you explain both?
Yes. That is the term, literally, I'll just put this euphemistically, colloquially in your terms, to Federation headquarters, and it also refers to the literal astronomical center that is the massive black hole, dimensional gate that connects to all other realities.
And that's the center of this galaxy.
And all galaxies, yes.
But I'm talking about this reference to Hanub-Ku. Is that that's
yes.
the center of all galaxies or this particular
it is
galaxy?
Particularly your galaxy, but of course
and
by
that's where it's
context
connected
to all galaxies, since it is connected to everything.
Yeah, it's connected to all of them.
Yes, but that is the reference to the center of your galaxy in both astronomical terms and cultural terms, yes.
All right, and the energy that flows from this center influences us.
Yes, in a regulatory sense.
Like a cyclic manner or whatever.
Cyclically, yes.
Okay. And it's in communication with our sun?
Yes.
Okay. And it resonates to our sun, more or less, communications of the cyclic nature?
Yes, this is why it was so important for your moon to be, in appearance to you, exactly the same size as the solar disk.
Yes, I understand.
Because it needed to be vibrationally connected not only to the solar disk, but also to the center.
Okay.
So that its cyclic energy could be translated appropriately to the balancing that was required on the planet, yes.
All right, and the Mayans, they had, what they're noted for and everything and all. What was their major connection to? The Pleiadians? Are they an offshoot of Pleiadians that were on this planet?
They are actually more anciently connected to the idea of Sirian-Orion cosmology, more than Pleiadian.
Sirian-Orion?
Yes.
All right, and was that genetically, were they genetically derivative of this, or
only
incarnationally?
In the sense that there was some Sirian genetics in the third dimensional context that was supplied, but mostly we are talking incarnationally, consciously, and energetically. Though some serious genetics from third dimensional Sirian reality needed to be supplied so that the bodies could handle that particular combination. Yes.
All right. One other thing.
Yes.
Do you have a name for me? Personally?
Yes.
See, we have names for ourselves, which you know. You don't have names for yourself. And you take on the name Bashar just for our convenience.
Yes.
Okay, do you have a name that you refer to us, or do you refer to us, individually or collectively? Or?
Oh, collectively, we use a variant in that sense of your own name for yourselves, but in the context of our ancient language, you are simply called Umani.
Umani, okay.
Yes.
And how about me personally?
Yes. One moment. Huvashu.
Huvashu.
Yes, Huvashu.
All right.
For that to us indicates the idea of an Orion connection that, well, perhaps this is a rough translation, but an Orion connection that constantly sweeps itself clean. The idea of a box that contains a past but is constantly emptying itself out to see what else will fit inside.
That's pretty accurate.
Yes.
Hey, you know me pretty well.
Why, thank you.
All right, and
you have revealed much of yourself to us.
All right, and is there anything you would like to ask me?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Bashar.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bashar.
And you good day.
Could you discuss the origin of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter?
It is, from what many of you suspect, the destruction of a planetary body.
Well, could you describe that planet and when that destruction occurred and what caused it?
There are many concurrent things that are involved in that particular idea. Mostly, it is that the vibration of the civilization brought about great polarization that resulted in the cataclysmic timing of the passage of a large celestial body which impacted gravitationally and broke the planet up.
I see. And when would this have happened?
Approximately, in your terms of time, about 6 million of your years ago, give or take.
Huh. I see. Could you tell me how far into space does the gravity of this solar system extend?
In the way that you would mean it in terms of registration on your instrumentation, you will find that about 3 diameters of what you consider the entire system to be.
Okay. And, well, I'm taking that as like the furthest, from the sun to the furthest point in the orbit of Pluto.
But that is a radius.
Right. Well, okay, double that as a diameter.
Yes. So
okay,
3 diameters.
Okay.
Although, in actual fact, there is another body beyond Pluto. So in that sense, actually, a little bit farther than Pluto.
Okay. Is there a name you could call that body, or is there a name to it?
It has been referred to as Nibiru, and we will utilize that name for now.
Okay, good. The theory of dark matter, is that valid?
Yes, but it is not impactfully what your scientists think it means. It is something a little bit different than they think it represents. It does exist, but it has a very different quality than what they believe in terms of why they are thinking that it is important to their equations. There is yet to be new understanding that will throw their equations completely off with regard to what the actual nature of this so-called dark matter is.
Well, they relate it to trying to figure out or explain the so-called Big Bang, which was the next thing I wanted to ask you about.
Yes.
Is that an adequate explanation for the creation of our physical universe?
Yes, within the one cycle you understand physiologically, there is the compaction that led to the expansion that will lead back to the compaction, but that is within one cycle. In an ultimate sense, it is actually all infinite.
Okay. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Could you explain what the explosion was that occurred in Tunguska in Siberia in 1908?
A craft. Malfunctioning. It was not, as many of your people believe, the idea of either a cometary body or the idea of a miniature black hole, or the idea of a meteoric impact. It was, as many people suspect, the idea of a malfunctioning craft. But more in the sense of what you would call an energy gate craft, a intrusion into your dimensional reality, something far more sophisticated than simply the concept of what you would consider to be a quote-unquote nuts and bolts technology. That's why it was perceived mostly as the idea of glowing energy rather than literally as a metallic craft. It was not metallic in that sense, though when it intruded into your dimension of reality, it did begin to take on some crystalline metallic qualities before it exploded.
And,
in fact, it actually was a miscalibration of the energy requirements for stabilization in your dimension that caused the explosional rip. When coming from a higher dimensional frequency, things must be calibrated very carefully in order to find true balanced incorporation into the physical material reality into which they are intruding. An imbalance was achieved, and it created a dimensional rip, which backlashed, fed back into the mechanism, and allowed there to be a powerful explosion. Does that make any sense to you?
Somewhat, yeah. I'll listen to it again.
Well, it's, again, similar to the idea of attempting to bottle something up that is simply far too powerful for the container when it is miscalculated. And thus it blew the container apart as it was forming.
Okay.
As it translated from a higher dimension of great power down to a dimension of more restricted and limited expression of power, the miscalibration allowed there to be an inconsistency in the container that was forming to hold the idea of the translation in the jump from one dimension to the other, and in that sense the destabilization caused an explosion outward of energy. Does that make more sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Oh, all right.
Leads to something else I wanted to know about, in that apparently from time to time, people, I don't know what to call them, extraterrestrials or UFO people, whatever, that are flying around in extra-dimensionally or whatever, make mistakes every once in a while.
Of course.
Which leads to both the concept of Roswell, but more specifically now, what's going around is a film purporting to be an interview with a captured Gray. Could you talk about that?
This is what you would call a recreation of an act. Recreation of an actual event, not an actual event. But it is, to some degree, an accurate recreation of an actual event.
An event being that a live Gray was taken into custody, so to speak?
Yes.
And interrogated or whatever?
But this is not what you would call a filming of the actual event, but a relatively accurate recreation.
I understand. What bothers a lot of people, including me, about that is that if the Grays, if it was a Gray, if they have the kind of telepathic ability to control us or influence us telepathically, as has been reported, would the rest of them allow this to happen to their one of their mates? Wouldn't they come get them?
If you clip off the end of your fingernail, do you care to retrieve it?
No, not in any meaningful sense.
The idea is that you must understand this as a hive mentality, and one individual member cut off from the group, in some senses to them, is of little consequence.
Cut off by virtue of having been accidentally captured, or was there another process that...
Yes.
Oh.
Again, as you say, mistakes can happen, miscalculations can occur, and even though they understand there may be a higher purpose to this on one level, on what you would call the pragmatic physiological level, and dependent upon their construct of consciousness and its difference between human and them in that they do not have the same emotional capacity, their telepathic connection simply regards this as inconsequential to a great degree, because it is simply like a small fragment of the whole, and it is only well, not even really an inconvenience to them. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Plus, they also understand that there are ways to use the situation to their own advantage as well. In that, since they are telepathically connected, then any such presence, no matter how it occurred, will also act like an absorber of information that will be fed back into the collective.
I see. I was wondering, in the general field, I guess, of UFOs and the technology.
Yeah.
When Nikola Tesla died, it's my understanding that a lot of his papers and documents were taken by government people and kept under wraps even until now.
Yes.
Is any of that being used either by government or extra-governmental black operations or whatever in terms of trying to mount technology for space travel or anything else?
Yes.
Could you specify what it is?
Some of the gravitational concepts, some of the energy transference concepts, although much of the work is actually, as you would say, over the heads of most individuals. But they have made sense out of some of it. It especially has to do with the idea of what we typically refer to as resonance identification, which means the understanding of certain frequencies that will, in a sense, trigger other things to happen on a more expanded scale.
Something that I perhaps could get at in another way that I asked you once before. I guess I was not very precise in the way I asked it. But speaking of a man like Tesla, and there have been others.
Yes.
Of such a unique talent, so obviously out of his time, even way ahead of us.
But not really, because there can really be no such thing, but I know what you mean.
Well...
He was a direct product of his time. That actually is the point.
Okay, I understand. There are two different sort of frames of reference here that we're talking in. From the point of view that somebody like him creates knowledge, discovers things, sets things down and so on, which for one reason or another are never used. They're either suppressed or they disappear by accident, so-called, or whatever. From a kind of an overall overview of how the Earth is developing, I don't understand the purpose of that. It seems like a tremendous waste of energy. Why did he even bother to come here and do that in the first place?
First of all, once an idea is introduced into a consciousness matrix, it is never lost. So it is still available to the collective consciousness of your people.
I understand.
That's one thing. Secondly, of course, is the taking of the responsibility for the creation of your reality in the way that you have, in the creation of compartmentalized structures that work upon the concepts of fear and denial. And this is an opportunity to allow yourselves to decide that it is important to change those things when you see that they are only doing the job you set them up to do, really. Because ultimately, the idea is that they have achieved the status they have achieved and the abilities that they have achieved to suppress these things because many people on your planet have given their power over to them out of fear. And thus they are only doing, in a sense, what many of you have created them to do. When you take back responsibility for these things, then they will no longer have the capacity to do this. They will no longer need to do that job.
By taking back responsibility, are you speaking in the narrow sense of political action or reform or something deeper?
That as well, but also the idea that most people on your planet still, in a sense, are dysfunctional with regard to the idea of their own responsibility for their actions and their own sense of connection to the infinite and their own expression of self-empowerment. In a sense, many people are still operating in the denial phase of wanting someone to take responsibility for them because most people on your planet still, shall we say, define the concept of responsibility as blame instead of freedom. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All it is the ability to respond. But your people don't yet understand that.
Okay, and if I could ask just two other things here.
Number one?
The orgone research of Wilhelm Reich, is that valid and real?
It is valid in concept, though not always in the approaches that different people have taken with it, but in concept, yes.
Okay.
Number two?
The second thing was a follow-up to a question that you were discussing last time here, regarding the state that people find themselves in immediately after death.
Yes.
Well, I'm wondering about an individual such as Jeffrey Dahmer or perhaps a terrorist who drives into a crowded square, blows himself up and as many people as he can with him. Well, when these people, whatever you call it, wake up, as it were.
Yes.
In other words, I'm talking about people who do what we would commonly call evil, or
yes,
really
I understand.
where they find themselves and what is their reaction to it?
Well, of course, it will depend upon each specific case, because it will depend upon what, A, they thought they might find, B, they feared they might find, C, that they might have not had any thought about it at all, and, of course, the collective energy of what might have been their last action in physical reality, and perhaps many other factors. But let's just put it this way. To answer your question generally, for those that might be engaged in that kind of vibration in general, and to that kind of degree of expression of it, most likely the first experience would be one of great confusion. For it will take some time for cohesiveness to align itself with the recognition that they are where they are, in fact, that they are even still existing. Then, perhaps slowly, over what might pass from your perception as time, there may be the idea that what has just happened was like a dream. Because once you generally enter the spirit realm, so to speak, physical reality takes on very much of the same quality that you feel the spiritual level has right now. Kind of a quasi-dreamlike imaginative projection of something that you're not quite sure is real. Physical reality, in that sense, changes places. And all of a sudden, the spiritual idea is more tangible. And to some degree, for many people, there is instant recognition of remembering, oh, that's right, this is who I am, and I just woke up from either A, dream, or B, a nightmare. That was not my real, true self. Let's see, what was that all about? So in general, those are some of the responses for that kind of action. Then there will be education, understanding, alignment of how the soul can use that in a positive, constructive way for its growth. Because on that level, really, on the higher levels of spirit, it will only be used that way. But there may be rebalancing that the soul feels is required or the spirit feels is required for the actions taken, and thus they may assign themselves to different duties that will help in terms of guidance and so forth, perhaps, to balance out the idea of the consequences of some of those actions when perhaps they did them from a misunderstanding. Does that help?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, one more thing. It is from time to time, again, because your strongest belief creates the reality, possible that many of these individuals will actually, if they were acting out of fear, in most cases these kinds of actions stem from that, will immediately experience the idea of everything that they have themselves caused. Do you understand? That will be what you call the life review. They will actually experience everything they did to anyone else. Mm-hmm. And they will experience every ripple of that, no matter how far it may have affected someone else down the line, all at once. So they will then, with that, shall we say, sort of shock treatment, awaken into their true identity, because in a sense, they will absorb that and see from the perspective that they could not see from in physical life, as to what the consequences of their actions truly are energetically. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. I've heard.
Yeah.
I've heard it said by commentators and whatnot that an individual rarely might be in danger of doing acts or whatever that are so heinous that they might even destroy their humanness. Is that possible?
Well, to alter out of humanness, yes, but not to destroy the essence of their consciousness. No. That cannot be destroyed. But yes, because you are not innately human as a consciousness, you can certainly rearrange yourself to be very, quote-unquote, vibrationally far from humanness. Absolutely. Because humanness is simply one of the ways that consciousness has of expressing itself within infinite creation. Make sense?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
And to you, good day.
Referring to Roswell, the tape that was on TV about an autopsy, was that a fake?
It is a fabrication, yes.
You say there are pyramids on the moon and Mars. Do we have
Yes.
pictures of those right now?
Yes.
They're just not revealed to us.
Correct.
My brother's a doubter. Could you help me with this?
A doubter of what?
Anything that you can't see, hear, feel, or touch.
So?
He
It's
said,
not our place to change anyone's mind.
Yes, but I wanted to communicate with him on some of these things and maybe open him up a little bit.
Well, go ahead, but it's his choice as to whether or not to buy into it.
True. Could you help me on one thing?
Such as?
Okay. He says my father's given name at birth is a name I do not know.
So?
And that he knows it. Could you tell me what that name is?
No. Because this is being done for the purpose of convincing. And therefore the door is closed to us because that is against our purpose.
All right. I once knew a man who called himself Geronimo. Spent some time with him 15 years ago. Could you enlighten me on where he might be today?
Have you checked your area of Idaho?
No, I haven't. I haven't checked anywhere for him.
All right. Begin in your area of Idaho and see where that leads. That is what we sense the trail to be, at least in part, in that direction.
So he is alive today?
I didn't say that.
Oh.
I just said check in Idaho.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
And how are you?
Perfect, and you?
I'm fine. I understand this to be our last communication for a while.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. I had a dream not too long ago, and in this dream scenario, I was taken someplace in the desert, and a black helicopter landed, and a being came out, and I remarked at the time, "You aren't human, are you?" And it was very tall and very much like a gray and a tall essence, and he began speaking to me verbally.
Yes.
And I cannot remember the content of that conversation, and I was hoping that maybe you had a way that you can help me recall some of that content of that information, because it was blocked for me.
Perhaps, but again understand that sometimes there is reason why such conversations are blocked.
I don't understand.
The idea, number one, is that sometimes the information that is shared on that level is blocked by agreement because of the timing of the release of information on your planet as to whether it will be detrimental or beneficial for that information to be known. Sometimes it is blocked because many members of your society actually now have developed a technology where they can extract information directly from your mind, and it would be perhaps to the disadvantage of your society for them to do so. You understand?
I understand that, yes,
So
I do.
some of it is for safeguarding. However, there are things that we can discuss. Number one, some of the conversation entailed remembering more of who you are relative to their civilization, since you have a counterpart in their civilization.
Yeah, I understand it's a parallel life of some sort.
Yes?
Yes, I understand that because I'm very much in touch with that quite a bit.
So a lot of the conversation involved that particular idea and how you relate to that idea with regard to your human incarnation.
Yeah, I understand, and I quite a bit keep going back to that same area, that same place constantly. It's like a hotel room altogether without no walls in between.
Yes, well, this is in a sense
like a
screen adaptational memory for convenience sake.
I see. And
it is simply another space and time that your mind will interpret as that kind of a structure, since it needs to make sense out of the place that it is in.
Yeah, that's true, and there were many of us, too, and I remember there was definitely a psychic connection between all of us at the time.
And what was also discussed, in a sense, was the timing of things and what the agenda is leading up to and when certain things will be done and unfolded on your planet.
Yeah, it did sound familiar, the course of the conversation. I remember thinking how familiar this is.
Yes, and of course you understand it was not literally a black helicopter. That also was a configuration of your mind to make sense out of the idea of a type of craft.
I understand that. I remember in the conversation of the dream that I kept saying, I don't have my luggage, I don't have my luggage, I can't go, and they didn't take no for an answer in that, of course, too.
Yeah,
why did I feel like I had to carry my baggage?
Well, that's really a good question, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Why do you feel that you have to carry baggage?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. All of you know the answer to that question. It is your definitions.
I see.
Definitions are the only thing that create the realities you experience. The definitions create the motivations for the choices that you make. That's all there is to it. So anything that may appear to be excess baggage that you are carrying around, when looked at from the higher level of your being, is simply the product of having within your physical consciousness matrix, definitions that are constructing your physical personality that make it seem necessary to carry things that may in fact not be aligned with your core true self. So, anytime you feel you are carrying baggage you don't really need, ideally, search your definitions to find out why you would be motivated to choose to hold on to something that doesn't work for you. Because it is always in the definitions you will find it.
I understand that concept. I've heard that before.
Yes, this is also some of the conversation you had.
Oh, I understand that.
That's why you discussed the idea of excess baggage, but translated it as the idea of the baggage literally.
I see.
You follow?
Yeah, I believe I do. And does this have my other counterpart that's in another place-time continuum?
Yes.
I want more conscious recollection of that. How
Then
do I
let go
get
of the baggage. That, in a sense, is what was told to you. When you let go of the baggage, you will have more conscious recollection of that idea. And be more like that self. Being more like that self, being more of that vibration, will allow you to function more in the awareness of what that self knows. That is what communication is. The idea, again, remember, is that when you create yourself to be that vibrational state, then you know the same things that anyone else on the same level knows. It is not actually, in that sense, reading each other's minds. Communication, transference, is not really transference. It is simply the idea of identifying so strongly on the same wavelength that you know the same things simultaneously.
I see.
That's how it works. That's why people who are in love often exhibit knowing each other's thoughts. It's not that they know each other's thoughts, it's that they're having the same thoughts at the same time, because they're on the same frequency. They are translating the idea of their definition into experiential reality simultaneously.
So is that what we mistaken as being in love? It's just that a common denominator is a frequency?
It's not a mistake. Unconditional love is the prime frequency of the infinite creation.
I see.
That's all it is. Not to make less of it, that's what it is. It is the vibration of the infinite. Unconditional love. Remember that the unconditional existence and love, what you call love, that vibration, is so unconditional on behalf of the infinite that will actually allow you to know or believe that you are not unconditionally loved. That's how unconditionally loving it is.
I understand that.
Make sense?
Yes, I do.
Does that help you?
I understand that. And how much does the government have to do with interfering with our agenda or with their agenda?
Not really too much, because there's not much they can really do. However, there is a lot of static. But when you say our government, remember, that's you. It's your planet. Responsibility, remember?
I see.
You want to change it? Change it.
Yeah, can we lessen the polarities?
You can. But the idea really is not so much to try to change in the classical sense those structures, but to create new structures that can replace them that are more vibrationally balanced.
Yes.
Because the old structures in this transitional age will not be capable of standing up under their own weight and will not survive. The idea, therefore, is to have new structures ready to replace them when they start to crumble, as they are already beginning to do.
Yes, I understand that.
So, that's the idea. Be your own government in the way you want to be, instead of being your own government in the way that you don't. It's your planet.
That. I had one more question I want to ask you. You mentioned last week about the big craft that was on outside of up in the atmosphere, not too far from San Francisco on the California coast, and I want to ask you about that and the Federation and who was there. And you said at that time that they were here to relieve some of the pressure of tectonic plate, the Pacific tectonic plate.
Yes.
And is that their only agenda or their mission?
At that moment, it was, yes.
Are they still with us at this present time? Do you know?
No. They do not need to be right now. But the result of that was experienced as a few minor quakes down in what you would call the Pacific coastal area, following within that week.
I see.
Do you understand?
I believe that, yeah. I understand that, and I remember listening to that. And what about the Syrian energy that's supposed to be with us this summer?
The Sirius energy is now growing all the time because you are moving into that cycle. It is now always with you, and there are many ways to experience it more strongly. some of which have to do with the idea of forming stronger contact with the other species on your planet that are called cetaceans, since they are very strongly telepathically connected to the Sirius consciousness and can help remind you of how you are, too, when you learn to play with them.
I see. And how does that affect us? According to the Hale-Bopp comet, that is now the gravity waves are now leaving us at this point. How is that going to leave us now?
It doesn't affect you at all. The idea is that it reflects you, not affect you, reflects you. And thus it was a great reflector, and still is to some degree, for the timing of great changes in your collective consciousness. But the idea of its representation is decide what reality definition is true for you, because that's what's going to be amplified. So you'd better clarify your definitions.
I understand that. Is there another comet that will be coming within 10 years? I understand. Is that true? About 10 years, that time span. And there'll be some other great changes at that point, correct?
It is reflective of great changes that you are setting up within yourselves, yes.
It should be well seen like the Hale-Bopp. Is that correct?
To some degree. Not exactly in the same way, but to some degree, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this timing, we will once again extend to each and every one of you our deep appreciation in allowing for the co-creation of this interaction in this way through this window at this time. Again, I remind you of the critical need for you to be yourselves and to live your dreams instead of simply dreaming about being alive. Take the opportunity to follow your joy, because that joy is the vibration of your unerring, unconditional, absolutely natural, core, true self. So, act on it. It is the thread, it is the compass needle that leads squarely to you as your full aspect and expression of the infinite in this reality domain. We thank you for the co-creation of this acceleration and the recognition of the cycles that we co-created together to bring us together into a third reality that we are together also creating to experience new ideas within. Our unconditional love to each and every one of you. Good day. How did it go? Thank you all very much for being here tonight. I look forward to seeing you again sometime. Thanks. I'm woozy. I said I'm woozy. A lot of energy here with this tonight. Something was different, yeah. Seeing a lot of really large-scale imagery and stuff. Thank you. I'm coming back slowly.
The first time I've ever seen it. And I just feel so happy.
Thank you for coming. My pleasure. Glad you enjoyed it. My pleasure.
I think he had more fun this time.
Oh, he always has fun.
Well, I realize that. Well, let me put it this way. We allowed
more fun. Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Good seeing you again. And I hope you, whatever the choose is, I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Smooth sailing as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. You too. Hi. Hey. How you doing?
See you later. Would you believe it if I told you? I drew that freehand on May 5th. And they said
Really? Picture your wife. You're in sync.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
I know.
And I wouldn't even have known if he didn't bring that.
How interesting, huh?
You got a call?